In this message series that we have been doing over the last few weeks called Away in a Manger, we have really been doing a retracing of the paths that different people have taken to get to the manger, to get to the birthplace of Christ the Messiah. And a few weeks we started with Mary and her story, and we have traversed Joseph's story, and last week our kids told us the Christmas story in a new way. And today we are going to trace the path of the shepherds. Those shepherds watching the sheep in their flock by night. And that's all we know about these shepherds, right? We don't know anything about these shepherds. In fact, they don't get named individually. It's not like, Mike and Rod, and, they don't have the individual names. They don't have their individual stories. They just get lumped all together as the shepherds. But they become a very vital and important piece of the Christmas story. Because they are the first ones to hear that pronouncement that the Savior, that the Messiah is born. And it's their belief and their trust and their amazement and their curiosity that sends them dashing to Bethlehem to see this child that has been born. But we don't know that much about the shepherd, so we need to kind of take a look at what a shepherd does. Sort of a shepherd's job description, if you will, right? Now, how many of you have ever, currently or in the past, taken care of an animal of any kind? Okay. Quite a few. I mean, that can be as small as, a hamster or a ferret, all the way up to, cows and bulls and sheep and whatever else, right? But I think we all know that no matter what animal it is, no matter what size animal it is, it takes some work to care for that animal, right? If we're going to do it well. And so, we have 2 cats at home who are the, love of our lives. We love them just like children. And they are wonderful companions, and they are fluffy and snuggly, and they're just amazing. But, at 4:45 in the morning, when they come up, and thankfully, I'm not usually the one that gets this. Emily's usually the one that gets the paw in the ear, like, hello, time to be fed, time to get up. I need my attention now. Or we have a wonderful male cat who is got a condition called diabetes insipidus, which is not the same as diabetes in humans, but it means that he produces too much salt, so he needs a lot of water. But he also, when he uses the litter box, produces these clumps that are like concrete. I mean, literally, we even lost a cat sitter over that one time because she couldn't scoop out these litter clumps, and then, our garbage can is like 50 pounds, so it's like, Santa's sack, but not with all the good stuff in it, And it's a lot of work. Animals can be a lot of work. Now, that's a small animal. Think about a large animal. How many of you have ever been a farmer and milked cows before? Quite a few. And we know that, that never ends, right? You can't just take a day off. The cows always need to be milked, often twice a day. So depending on how many cows you have, I mean, that's quite a chore. That can eat up pretty much all of your day. But they need that because if they're not milked, that can be very dangerous for them. And shepherds, or sheep farmers today, they have some modern conveniences that will help them. They have pens, they have electric fences, they can use llamas and alpacas and other things to keep predators at bay, but the sheep still need to be fed, they still need to be watered. At times they need to be sheared and get those coats off. There's a lot of work and a lot of maintenance, but they don't have to do 24 hours a day. Because when they have them in their pens and they can be out grazing and they kind of can take care of themselves for a big part of the day. But if we go back to Jesus' day, we know that shepherding was a 24-hour-a-day job. And if you had major herds or flocks of sheep, you had to take them out to grazing areas. And again, we're talking about the Middle East, so we're not talking about areas that have a plethora all over of green grass and pasture land. So sometimes they had to go quite a distance to find that land. And so they worked in teams, and they would take, 4, 5, 6 shepherds, and they would go out together. And they would be responsible for one part of the flock. If it was big enough, you would have another team of shepherds that were responsible for another part of the flock. And they would have to take shifts, right, because you can't work 24 hours a day. So there needs to be some time for sleep. And so they would work in shifts. So sometimes you'd have the day shift, sometimes you'd have the overnight shift. And of course, you're out with the animals, so you're kind of living like the animals too. There's not all these modern conveniences. You're not getting a shower every day. Your meals, are coming more sporadically. It was a tough life, not an easy job. And so you can imagine that when you're working 24 hours a day, that you're probably liking the fact that when the sun is out and you can sort of see from a distance where there might be some trouble coming, right? Because if there's one thing that, like sheep, it's the predators, right? They want a meal too. So around here, coyotes, wolves, lots of predators that want to have a nice sheep for their own Christmas dinner, right? But when it's light out, and you can get up on high ground, you can see for miles and miles. So you can see and sense when some danger is approaching. So if you're up on the high rock and you can see that there's a pack coming, you can start to make your plans to move to their defense. But what happens in the night? What happens when it gets dark? Can't see, right? You can create a little fire and there's a glow around that, but you can no longer see for miles and miles to sense where that danger is coming from, right? So I can imagine that nighttime was a troubling time for the shepherds, especially for those that had to be alert and awake all night to try and protect the flock. Because they're doing their best to probably make the perimeter and see what could be out there to try and be alerting if something is coming. And then, of course, not only do you have to worry about that, but, sheep are not the most loyal of animals. They're not like the dogs that, you say, hey, sheepy, come on back. And it just comes on back. So you got to worry about some of them wandering off too, right? Oh, there's better grass over here. I'm just going to make my way over. Oh, nobody's behind me. Well, that's the shepherd's job then, to go and find that sheep. So now I just want us to think about that first Christmas night. Knowing that these shepherds too have heard the stories, the prophecies, those from Isaiah, that a child will be born for us. Authority will rest upon his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. They've been hearing these rumors and stories and prophecies about the Messiah that will come to set things right for all of Israel. But I have a feeling that probably wasn't on their minds that night when they're out trying to watch the sheep. And so the darkness has come the tough part of the night is here, and they're probably more praying for the dawn to break, because then the job gets a lot easier. When out of nowhere, it says a multitude of angels appear. And one of my favorite paintings by Daniel Bonnell called Seeing Shepherds gives us some even glimpse of what that might have been like. That when this multitude of angels shows up, the glow and the light that must have erupted onto that field would have been powerful and a bit terrifying. Not only terrifying for the shepherds, but just think if there was a predator trying to approach one of those sheep and that floodlight hits them, where is it going to send them? Fleeing away. Like a cockroach when you turn on the light, right? And I lived in North Carolina. I had a little experience with those cockroaches. But this multitude of angels shows up, and the light floods over the shepherds, and at first they have no idea what's happening. They are so afraid. But then just imagine the most calming, soothing voice from the angel saying, "Do not be afraid. For unto you is born this day in the city of Bethlehem a Savior, who is Christ the Lord." But again, they've been hearing this story maybe all their life. And so the angel says, this will be a sign for you, that this has finally come to pass, that if you go to Bethlehem, in this lowly stable, lying in a manger, will be the Messiah, wrapped in bands of cloth. And then, just as soon as they came, the angels depart, that light fades, and now they're left with the hardest part of all. Trusting that what they just heard was the fulfillment of God's eternal promise. And making a faith-filled decision to say, we will go and see. Not even we will follow yet, but the first step was we will go and see. And in our faith, that's the first step we all need to take. And I know some of us have friends and family members who may not be at the point where they say, I'm ready to follow Jesus. But I know that there are a lot of our family and friends who are ready to come and see, but they need the invitation. And friends, we are the messengers. We are the multitude of angels that in our own way can say to people, come and see this thing that God has done that will change your life forever. And the shepherds went, it says, with great joy and excitement, and found what the angels had promised, what God had promised. That's how they got to the manger. They got there on faith, on trust, because they believed that this could be true. What will it be like when we get there? When we also get to see this miraculous thing that God has done? We've seen it. We've experienced it each Christmas day. But now what do we do with it? Now, I didn't read this part of the story, but it says after they have come and witnessed this miraculous thing that has happened, they go and they tell. They share it with everyone they can. And just like our kids last week, with excitement and joy, shouted out, "Go tell it on the mountain, over the hill and everywhere. Go tell it on the mountain that Jesus Christ is born." That's the message we have for this Christmas. So I would encourage you and challenge you. If you haven't thought about it yet, if you haven't done it yet, you still got time. Invite your family, your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers to come here tomorrow night on Christmas Eve as we bring that amazing story to life once again. Let us go and tell. Thanks be to God. Amen.